Hey, good morning, football fans. We're looking forward to starting week 6. Can you believe it? The season is nearly halfway over, and we're still at a point where we have to ask, what are the teams doing? Why are they ranked the way they are? Now, to add to that, there was this recent article published, and this is where I'm really driving a lot of my thoughts from over the year, and it seems to pop up. You notice where this came from, Tuscaloosa News, right? Keep that bias in mind here. But he makes a decent point here when he starts his article off. He says, we are knee deep in the ain't played nobody portion of the college football season. He's absolutely right. There's a bunch of people who are highly ranked that haven't played anyone. And he even points out Power 5 schools usually feast upon a couple of cupcakes during September, leaving a flimsy strength of schedule before some of the meatier conferences matchups ahead. And then he goes on and he bashes basically Georgia and Tennessee and puts the blinders on for his Alabama team. All right. And when he gets into it, he says, when Alabama fans waded into the conversation, opposing fans were ready with sharp elbows. The Crimson Tide nearly lost at Texas in week 2 and ain't played nobody. Here are the brass tacks. Neither Tennessee nor Georgia has faced a rugged slate. Well, guess what? Neither has freaking Alabama. I'm sorry, Crimson Tide fans, but you've yet to play it, and I've got some of the data to show it. He's quick to point this out against Georgia and Tennessee, trying to build his team up, but he's completely lost credibility by not looking at what his own team that he's trying to propagate is doing. And I think it's perfectly valid for him to turn around and say, we haven't played them, and here's what we got to do to prove it. But he won't go there. All right, so let's look at the. Okay, so if we look at each conference, at where they were in the preseason and where they are today at the end of week 5, based upon the AP top 25 polls. And what I've done is I've taken anybody who received votes, which extends that top 25 out to 35, 36, 37 teams, and make those ratings and rankings. You can see that the SEC definitely was the top rated conference that was out there. If you take each of their teams that are in there, they come back with a preseason rating of about 27. Their best score was after week 1, where they got a 26. And where they're currently sitting today is at 28.3. So they're up a little over 2 points on the year. More notably is the Pac-12, basically starting out with an average ranking of near 40. And now that we've actually seen the likes of USC, Oregon, Utah playing in there, and you've got Washington, and I think even Washington State, I would say, was making a little bit of a run there for a little while. The Pac-12 has improved on their ranking significantly, over 7 points. To me, basically just showing the bias that comes out of a Southern football versus West Coast football. But hey, I'm not here to talk about that right now, although that may be a topic for another day. And looking at the group of 5, I mean, you can definitely see the average rating and ranking for the group of 5s are definitely below. But there are some teams that stand out, and I think they struggle being in one of these conferences and not having the ability to play. All right. So I would expect, an SEC champion should come out of here with a relatively difficult strength of schedule play, because the argument is, hey, I play in the SEC. I've already beat the best. Why do I have to go on and do something more? All right. Looking at this just a little bit deeper now, what I've done here is I've taken any team who's ever been in the top 25, and I've been tracking their schedule difficulty based upon that week's current ranking. I've also gone and taken week 5 and looked at everybody on their schedule throughout the remainder of the season and made one full season score for them based upon the week 5 ratings that we have today. So a few things that pop out. Back to our article from our Alabama homeboy, right? He couldn't see his own problem with his article. Right? Alabama basically currently has a schedule difficulty rating of playing. Their average opponent is currently ranked 44th. And they're not going to do much better. They only go to 45.8 on the year. Right? So all of his bashing about Georgia and Tennessee, it was accurate to a point. But when you go and look at Georgia, while they don't make the top 25 today, their full year is going to bring them in at a 42.2, which will put them up ahead of Alabama. Right? Likewise, Tennessee to date in the SEC has played a more difficult schedule and will play a much more difficult schedule than either Georgia or Alabama. Now, part of his article was you got to take Tennessee seriously. They're a contender. I think, maybe he was trying to say, like, let's not overlook them, but it kind of got lost in some of the noise of his own propaganda that was out there. As I look at the Big Ten, Ohio State and Michigan, I mean, that's what I keep talking about with the Big Ten. They haven't played anybody to date, and they're not going to do that much better. Michigan will eventually improve. Ohio State, not so much. So looking at who in the conferences have played teams, well, in the ACC, it's Wake Forest. In the Big Ten, it's Wisconsin. In the Big 12, it's Texas. In the Pac-12, it's Oregon. And in the SEC, it's Florida. Right? And you can go and look over here and find them. But one of the things you'll find is in some ways, these teams that have played the most difficult schedules has often come up with perhaps 1 or 2 losses. Right? And that's where this current rating and ranking system that's used between the AP and the coaches, I mean, it's so discriminatory against you got a loss, you're out. Right? Unless you're kind of one of these big name groups that are out there, then you can get a loss, and if there's a way we can manipulate it, we'll keep you in moving forward. That's my problem with the bias that's in the system, and this is a clear indication. Not only do I have printed material, from a sports writer specifically bashing other teams in his conference and trying to ignore what his own team is doing, but you can see it across the board here in these tables and with this data. And I got news for you. It's probably only going to get worse as we continue on through the second half of the season. So there you have it. I hope you enjoy college football. I love it. I think it's the most fun game that's out there. There's a chance for it to be a whole lot better, though. I really hope that we can get the college football playoff system enacted. And quite frankly, it just needs to be a top 16 teams are in. I don't care about conference champs. Not like they care either, looking at last year's result. And let's just play 16 teams in, and there's no buys. Go from there. We can argue about some home field, neutral field stuff, but it's the simplest solution forward if they're going to basically go to that 12-team format. You're already going to play those extra weeks. Why not make everybody play? These teams that are supposedly, quote unquote, the best have scheduled their own buys anyways. So let's quit giving them extra buys throughout the process. All right, that's our show for today. Please subscribe. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.